This guy who was looking at nematodes didn't just say, okay, I'll try to say something about nematodes. He picked them because they're the simplest organism with a wiring diagram worked out, and you want to know something about wiring diagrams. I mean, if you're doing rational inquiry, you're trying to understand something, and you organize your task, your research program, so it may lead you to understanding. You don't just do something in the hope that something will turn out.
Well, I don't think that's true right now.
What is the goal?
Well, what we have in the world are just, we have a huge environment, and we have to do, if you want to maybe compute it, you have to be able to make searches from a wide variety of places. There's a multitude of choices.
Yeah, but look, there's endless numbers of areas where you can set up problems with multitude of choices. Why pick this one? You only pick this one if you think you're going to learn something from it. Ask a question that's worth having an answer to. Show that chess playing is the way to answer that question, but nobody's doing that.
Well, how will we know when we do have an intelligent computer? Talk to it longer?
We won't ever know whether we have an intelligent computer any more than we will know whether we have an airplane that flies. It's a meaningless question, exactly as Turing said. Suppose I ask you this question, and suppose somebody came along and said, suppose I make something that goes up in the air, how are we going to know if it flies? That's just a dumb question, you know. It'll fly. There's no question as to whether it's going to fly. If you want to call that stuff flying, okay, it's flying. In English, you happen to decide to call it flying. In some other language, you call it something else. But there is no empirical question as to whether an airplane flies. And there is no empirical question as to whether an algorithm thinks, for exactly the same reason. Flying is something birds do, and thinking is something humans do. It's sort of embedded in a big matrix of human interests and so on. And just as airplanes don't do whatever it is birds are doing, even if they could fool somebody into thinking that it's a bird, that would be irrelevant. Similarly, algorithms or brains are not doing things that humans do. For example, is there a question as to whether brains think? Well, brains don't think. Of course they don't think. My brain doesn't see triangles for trivial reasons. Seeing triangles is a human action. We attribute that characterization to humans in a framework of human interests and concerns and motives. I mean, we don't study in the sciences things like thinking any more than we study things like desks in the sciences. I mean, these are concepts of common sense. They don't belong in the sciences. They don't enter into rational explanatory theories. So in the sciences, you're constantly trying to get rid of all these things and move to concepts that have some utility, not things like desk or thinking or something like that, or digestion. You know, you look at what's actually happening and try to understand it in terms of whatever concepts and principles are relevant. But to ask the question whether a program thinks or whether a brain sees a triangle is as dumb as asking whether an airplane flies. It is not going to have an answer for trivial reasons. There is no answer to the question whether airplanes fly, and there's no point setting up an analog of the Turing test that says, well, can we construct something that's going to fool a human under some circumstances? That won't tell us whether it's flying or not. Your brain doesn't see a triangle for quite uninteresting reasons, and correspondingly, something with the characteristics of your brain doesn't see a triangle. People are the ones who do things like that, just as Turing said. Now, you can ask pointless questions, like what will be the empirical conditions under which an airplane flies. If you ask a pointless question, you're never going to get an answer, of course. Now, it's interesting that in the, dealing with sort of phenomenal world, like airplanes and flying, nobody asks those silly questions. I mean, if somebody tried to start a new science dealing with the question whether airplanes fly, they'd be laughed out of, nobody would even bother laughing.